Panama in Central America. Panama is a land where beauty and danger are woven together like jungle vines. This tiny Central American country is full of extraordinary sights that enchant and astonish. Cutting through this dense jungle is an amazing 50-mile waterway. Today, this engineering marvel stands as a triumph of human skill, tenacity, and courage. This is the Panama Canal, where ships are lifted over mountains, built against all odds. They say it can't be built, not through this forbidden terrain. The French try in the 1880s, but go home after 9 terrible years, leaving behind 22,000 dead. The tropical rain breeds killer viruses. The temperature reaches a steaming 130 degrees and stays there. To come here in the early 1900s is to take life in your hands. Daring ventures need bold, passionate leaders. The Panama Canal has President Teddy Roosevelt. He is immensely popular, an adventurer who stops at nothing to achieve his goals. Roosevelt has a grand vision for America to become a global power. He needs a navy to dominate both the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. U.S. warships have to steam 60 days around Cape Horn to get from coast to coast. A canal across Panama will cut that time in half. For Roosevelt, this is not just a construction project, it's a patriotic mission. Thousands of Americans descend on the little country with the president's words spurring them on. He tells them to make the dirt fly. The plan is to dig a trench at sea level, but this means cutting through a range of mountains. And no one knows what to do with all that dirt. Roosevelt calls it the Big Ditch. And the ditch is being buried in its own mud. Now, another menace, jungle sickness. Canal workers by the hundreds get dysentery, pneumonia, malaria, even bubonic plague. It's a nightmarish cocktail of misery. But nothing is as fiendish as yellow fever. It can kill in 8 hours. It starts with muscle pain, followed by high body temperature and raging thirst. In Panama, they call it yellowjack. The little country is becoming a graveyard. It's a disaster. Roosevelt takes command and declares war on Panama's biggest menace, the lowly mosquito. They infest the jungle, spreading both malaria and yellow fever. Roosevelt stops work on the canal to concentrate on killing mosquitoes. He will sanitize an entire jungle. Fumigation brigades attack the flying pests. Others drain ditches and pump oil onto breeding grounds to kill the larvae. Disease-ridden villages are transformed into clean and safe places to live. They build quarantine clinics and slowly get the upper hand. Now Roosevelt sends in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to get on with the job of building the canal. He approves a dramatic new construction plan. Instead of a sea-level canal across Panama, there will be a series of locks. Roosevelt won't cut through volcanic mountains. He will lift the world's largest ships over them. The engineers bring in the largest steam shovels in the world. They build a new railroad to carry away the earth. Trains take it to the ocean for breakwaters. The workforce swells to 50,000 men and women from 97 countries. Many live in the new communities with all the amenities of modern America. They build a dam, creating a lake that's both an inland passage for ships and a source of water for mammoth parallel locks. The locks can hold ships 5 blocks long. Roosevelt's Canal is the biggest construction project in history and the defining task of a growing nation. No U.S. president has ever traveled outside the country while in office. Now, Roosevelt goes to Panama to inspect his grand vision. He times the trip for the rainy season, the better to experience what the workers are going through. He tells them they are soldiers fighting a glorious war for America's destiny. A newspaper photograph of Roosevelt at the controls of a canal steam shovel captivates the country. In 1914, success. The first ship makes the 8-hour passage through the Panama Canal. Since the French first arrived here, it has taken 34 years and cost more than 25,000 lives to realize the dream. Teddy Roosevelt is no longer president, but it is his triumph, the stunning achievement of a man who inspired brave people to move mountains.
When Americans think of the great engineering masterpieces of the United States, we generally think of something like the Sears Tower, Empire State Building, Brooklyn Bridge, or Golden Gate Bridge. But what if I told you that perhaps the biggest engineering accomplishment of Americans wasn't even in the United States, but in Panama? The Panama Canal is a 50-mile man-made canal cutting through the Isthmus of Panama that connects the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. It was constructed by the United States in order to find a waterway route between the two oceans. The Panama Canal represents both the best and worst of the United States. It represents the best in showing American ingenuity and engineering in creating a sustainable system for getting between the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. But at the same time, it highlights a negative period in American foreign policy in which the United States bullied around the countries of Latin America. Ever since Europeans realized that Columbus had discovered a new world and not a route to Asia, explorers became fascinated with the idea of finding a direct connection between the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. Sure, Ferdinand Magellan had circumnavigated the globe, but his route required sailing south along the Atlantic Ocean, circling around the southern tip of South America and moving up the Pacific Ocean on the western side of South America. Such a route was highly impractical. Other explorers searched for the legendary Northwest Passage, the supposed water route in North America that connected the Pacific and Atlantic Ocean. We now know that such efforts were worthless because such a route has never existed. The truth is, no water passage in North America or South America existed connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. There was, however, one narrow strip of land approximately 50 miles wide that connected North America and South America in southern Central America. This strip was called the Isthmus of Panama. The idea began to be floated around. What if a man-made waterway could be constructed in this narrow passage to connect the two oceans? Surely that would allow for a water connection between the two waterways. Imagine working in a rainy jungle with constant mudslides and widespread mosquitoes carrying a multitude of disease. Doesn't sound like fun, does it? For this reason, the first attempts by French entrepreneurs to build a canal were worthless. From 1881 to 1894, the French tried to build the canal. But the rainy conditions made construction nearly impossible, and the French entrepreneurs had to give up after going bankrupt and losing 22,000 workers to disease and injury. After the French realized that they would be unsuccessful, they sought potential buyers for the project. The United States decided to purchase the canal, negotiating the terms with Colombia, the country that had sovereignty over the canal. The treaty, known as the Hay-Herran Treaty, allowed the United States to lease the territory. Have you ever had someone give you their word only for them to go back on their promise? Well, the United States essentially did this with Colombia by negating the Hay-Herran Treaty. The problem was that there was also an independence movement among Panamanians.
So when Columbus stumbled onto the New World, when he came to places like Panama in 1502, he was surprised to discover seeming paradise. Seeming paradise. But in a way, the old stories were true. For there were monsters in this paradise. There were frustration, disease, and broken dreams. And conquering those would be one of the greatest achievements of the 20th century. It started with the incredible notion of challenging the planet's natural balance by linking the two greatest oceans on Earth. To slice a waterway across the continental divide of Panama and bypass the navigational gauntlet of South America. There was more at stake than improved shipping lanes. This would be Mother Nature's last stand. People would have to declare dominion over the very form and function of the land. It was the most important engineering project of its time, involving the largest earthen dam ever built, the largest man-made lake ever created. The epic effort was accomplished only through the grueling labor of 100,000 workers, whipped by the ambitions of powerful men who enjoyed breaking all the rules. In the end, it would cost billions of dollars and claim thousands of lives. The Panama Canal, and the world still ponders the profound implications of this modern marvel.